From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is John Small and I am your host. And my guest this week is Sean Gold. And Sean is the founder and CEO of Pilgrim Soul, which is a cannabis company focused on creative performance. And among their many products is one that I find very intriguing called Creative Thinking Journals that are meant to be used while you're high. And one of these journals was actually a top 500 best-selling book on Amazon in 2021. So Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
So before we get into cannabis for creativity, I'd love to get a little bit of your backstory. How did you get into cannabis? What were you doing before? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So how I got into the business of cannabis. Well, I got into the business of cannabis as a teenager, clearly, but like a lot of teenagers, was selling cannabis. And then I pretty much put myself through college with cannabis.
Really? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jersey.
Oh, nice.
New Jersey.
Maybe I bought cannabis from you. I grew up in Westchester County, but still. So you were, okay. So that helped pay for college though.
I'll pay for college. I was very fortunate. And my strategy was to always give people a great deal, give them more than they purchased. So if they got busted because it was illegal, clearly then, they would give up the guy who ripped them off all the time. So my strategy worked. And then I started working in creative. I was always a bit of I don't want to say weirdo, but a little bit odd, just as far as the way I thought, thinking different. I got a degree in finance because I thought I could work on Wall Street so I would make money, but it really wasn't my thing.
Right.
And I started working I interviewed like Connie Nast, and I just couldn't get past human resources and any of these.
You're probably good you didn't, because I worked at Condé Nast. It wasn't a picnic.
So I started working in startups. I was really intrigued. I saw John Scully talking about the Orlando Interactive TV test. This is 1991. And talking about how you'd be able to get video on demand. And I was like, whoa, if that's possible, that's inevitable. I got to be part of this. So I started getting into interactive stuff and started a company with these guys where you could listen to music on the telephones. This is before the internet. And then I just started going into these different digital startups because I couldn't get hired by any large companies. And I started this company where you could listen to music on the telephone before the internet. And then I launched a bunch of blogs, Engadget, Autoblog, Joystick. Was CMO of MySpace from 25 million to 110 million users, and helped launch Rihanna's lingerie brand and helped scale Fabletics as CMO of a company called Textile. So all these jobs I had were basically, there was no roadmap. They were businesses that the model didn't previously exist. In the fashion business, we were doing subscription fashion, which was like a whole new thing. So the creativity has been always part of my life, and I've used cannabis in my process of helping to invent and imagine and empathize with customers to build these businesses. My process has been I'm not really great at taking information in while I'm high. So I usually do my research and study while I'm not high, and then I'll write all my ideas down and construct a plan. Then I'll get high and go through all my ideas again and the decks and everything, and make nonlinear connections that I just didn't see, empathize with customers that I wouldn't otherwise, focus in ways that I couldn't. So cannabis has been a really great tool to me throughout my career. And I started this company, Pilgrim Soul, to help people use cannabis the way I do.
Right.
Really productivity.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of sometimes for a lot of people an oxymoron, cannabis productivity, right? Because there's a stereotype of cannabis as being like, stoners are lazy and don't get stuff done. Okay. But that hasn't been your experience at all.
Well,
well, let me rephrase that. That is sometimes not your experience, or you can use it in different ways, right? You can use it in different ways, right? If you want to use cannabis to just chill and be couch locked, then you can do that. But
Yeah, totally. But I really look for, like, I use cannabis for like hyper lucidity. I love to get high and riff with friends and talk about stuff and throw out ideas. And I always say that I don't agree with everything I say. Just want you to know that we're just spitballing here, spaghetti walling. So, but you're just coming up with ideas and testing them and riffing and laughing is really what I use cannabis for a lot in my personal life. But I definitely had a very focused way of using it for work. I would even, another variable to throw, I would get on the elliptical machine at the gym while high. So I actually optimized exercise.
yeah.
But that also helped me focus. Having this simple activity to do, I have a bit of ADD. So I can't do three things at once, but I could do two things at once. So if I had this simple activity to do while I'm focusing on this like deck and idea, generating ideas, they all kind of work together to help me really drill in.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of creative people find that cannabis helps them with their creativity specifically. Yeah. It seems like you're one of those people.
The creativity is like, there's been a lot of research on cannabis and creativity. It's all over the place. And some say it doesn't help with creativity, and others do. And I mean, if you look at the use cases, half the songs on Spotify would be gone without cannabis. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that cannabis enhances creativity. The Got to Get You Into My Life by the Beatles is, about cannabis.
Yeah.
But what the problem when you look at, like, you evaluate cannabis, it doesn't work in a simple box. There was a research report I was reading about. They did a report with entrepreneurs to see if cannabis made them more creative. And they gave like one group of entrepreneurs cannabis and a project to do, and another group of entrepreneurs cannabis, and one didn't and one did. And it was the same project. And it's a ridiculous kind of test because it doesn't work like that way. Cannabis is like, it triggers things. You go through life, you take in all the information you have, you get high, and you might empathize with someone in a new way, like a writer thinking about what a character would say or would feel, or, you connect two different things in a way that you never saw them before. And it happens in a very serendipitous way. I think it's not as easy to manifest or set in a
and it's different for different people. Yeah,
and it's different for different people. 100%.
And it sounds like for you, using a writing analogy here, we talk about like an edit pass, right? You do your first draft and then you kind of go back and look at it. It sounds like you like to use it on your second draft, right? So you like get all the ideas down there, but then your second draft, you go while you're high and you're able to kind of you said like connect things that you weren't able to connect maybe when you weren't high.
Yeah. That's how I use it, like consistently and tactically. There are times when I'll get high and recreationally, and I'll get the kernel of the idea itself. So it can be in the beginning of the process. It's great for divergent thinking. Cannabis lights up the frontal lobe. It gets the neurons firing in a more uninhibited way.
Yeah.
But it also represses an area of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is the judgment area of the brain. So with less judgment, more ideas. It's really great for idea production. It does not mean that all your ideas will be good ideas.
That's the thing. I always laugh about that, is that you'll think they're good ideas though, sometimes when you're high, like I'll be writing high and I think this is like the best thing I have ever written. Because it is shutting down that part of that nagging part of your brain sometimes that tells you like this sucks, or that judgmental side of your brain. At least in my case, this happens. And then I go back and read it and I'm like, this wasn't as good as I thought. But sometimes it is really good. So it's just a crapshoot a bit. But at least what it does is it shuts down that voice so that you're doing something that you might not have done before, right? Because you would have just talked yourself out of it in some way.
Better to have 10 bad ideas and one good idea than no ideas, or like two highly inhibited ideas. The enemy of creativity, cannabis or not, is really when you try to do divergent thinking and convergent thinking at the same time. Divergent thinking is idea production, and convergent thinking is really judging those ideas and criticizing them.
Right.
So that's a classic brainstorming rule. No ideas are stupid.
Just throw everything out there. So talk to me about the origin of these journals these creative journals that you came up with? Because that's kind of a new concept. I remember being sent one of those journals. I think it was during the pandemic. What was the thought behind that? I mean, I guess I'm understanding it now more that I am getting to know you and how you use cannabis, but talk to us about why you decided to do that.
The journals use classic innovation, ideation, brainstorming techniques. A lot of them I've used throughout my career, sort of looking for different ways to reimagine things or challenge my own perspective or challenge default thinking. So they're all based on real classic techniques from books like Tinker Toys and Game Storming, classic books on ideation, things I've learned from like companies like IDEO. I just made them a bit more whimsical and a lot more fun. And I also dumbed down the instructions. Nobody likes directions when you're not high, but
even worse.
Even less. So the other thing was I have a cannabis line, Pilgrim Soul, where I really mix the most dynamic creative strains together for nuanced types of creative thinking. I have a creative imagination blend, creative focus, creative awareness, and creative reflection blend. And as an example, creative focus blend is all these strains that index high for creativity, but also focus. So I mix those together. And I work with some scientists to analyze the cannabinoid and terpene profiles. And there's as much science as we can put into it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can smoke my creative imagination blend or creative focus blend and think about your ex-husband or your mortgage. There's no guarantee you're going to have a creative experience. So I created the journals as guardrails on the experience to ensure a positive creative outcome. So people stay focused. And I also made them analog instead of digital because just creativity happens in a unique way in an analog space than it does in a digital space. And also there's a lot less distractions.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. And so when you say analog, these are actual journals like that you write in, like with your handwriting. And it reminds me of like, writing pages. A lot of times there's this thing called writing pages, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is from The Artist's Way. And that she really insists, that writer, Julie Cameron, that you do it longhand, that there's something about the process of writing longhand that stimulates creativity in an interesting way. And I have had that experience. I've done morning pages with her and they're very effective.
Yeah. At the time, you have these moments, these sort of the pause of moment when you're writing that gives you more time to think and slows down the process a bit. It's interesting because like jazz musicians, they're famous for smoking cannabis and being obviously pioneers in artistic cannabis in certainly the 20th century. And they say they would smoke it because it would slow time down for them. And that's a big part of creativity is really very often about slowing the mind and letting ideas flow. So that's kind of, it's all really part of that and getting into a flow state.
Well, give me some examples of what the journal might ask you to, like some of the exercises that the journal might.
Yeah. So there's 50 different exercises in there. And they're broken up into 4 different sections: creative imagination, which is divergent thinking; creative awareness, which is like riffing on the world around you. So I might say, go into a coffee shop and create a field guide for the people you see. Like just pick a random person, like, what are their habits? What are their mating habits? What foods they eat? Sort of just taking an analogy of like a field guide for birds and making it about humans. Or I have a creative reflection section is more like The Artist's Way, where I'm asking you to tap into yourself and really you go inside to find creativity. One in there is about sense stretching, where you like smell coffee and like, how does it make you feel? What does it make you think? What are the memories? Gasoline, garlic, like go through all these. There's one exercise where I just give you, just go through smells, scents that you have in your cinnamon and like, what does that bring up? And often it can be a trigger for awesome stories, songs. There's one called Word Links, which is in the creative focus section, which is I give you 2 words and you have to draw that are seemingly unrelated.
Yeah.
And you have to draw a word bridge across to connect them. So it could be like senator and duck. What are the 4 or 5 words that bridge from senator to duck? Could be like Washington, D.C., lake,
I don't know why I thought Dan Quayle. Maybe because Quayle's like a bird and he was a senator at one time. By the way, I'm aging myself talking about Dan Quayle. But I know what you mean, yeah.
What's really
I'm also not high now, so who knows what would happen.
What's great about it is when you do this exercise with a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a friend, and you see you're like, really? That's how you got from tambourine to squirrel? Like, that's how your mind works? It's really kind of funny. And I didn't do this on purpose, but I got so many emails and social comments from people that said they use this during COVID. They use it, with their mother or their father or their sister or brother, or they use it on Zoom. It was like a way to connect. So I was carrying my journal the other day and someone came up to me and was like, oh my God, I have that journal. I love that journal. And cool. I created it. And they're like, I use this with my mother. Like she's a writer and we have really hard trouble connecting. And every time we get together, we do an exercise. And it was like, obviously it was a beautiful thing to hear.
Affirmation for you. Yeah.
I didn't people have taken the journal a lot more seriously than I thought they would. In some sense, they're taking it more seriously than I am myself. I mean, I created it with this idea and this impact, but to help people, just sometimes you need to shake up your own reality and look at things from a different perspective.
Do you think that's why? Because I was going to ask you, why do you think that they've really taken to it so effectively, so much?
I know people need prompts. We get stuck in default thinking. Another big enemy of creativity. A lot of the enemies of creativity are like risk, judgment, not going with our gut, negative bias. As we get older, we really develop a negative bias towards things and that won't work and then default thinking is really one of the worst. We need default thinking in a lot of ways because it's efficient. I know the answer to that. I already thought about that. Here's the path I've used, and it's almost like an instant reflex. But again, that's also why we lose creativity. I read this quote the other day by Gloria Steinem that women are the only species I know of that grows more radical with age. It was interesting because I find that women can become more creative as they get older, where men get a bit more complacent. And then I was reading about it and I sort of came across menopause as this thing that makes women more creative in some sense because it changes the biochemistry, changes the way you see things. And it's like a dramatic, physical altering, mental altering experience for women that actually challenges default thinking, and which is really, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
It does make sense. Of course, neither of us being women, we don't really know, but it seems to make a lot of sense. I'm thinking about my own wife, and she's certainly gotten very creative with the way that she's basically changed her career in midlife from being a chef to being a therapist. And a lot of guys might not want to take that kind of risk or chance.
They prefer calm seas to rough.
Yeah. We're like, I don't want to shake it up. I want to play golf. It's very interesting that you made this book. Is this the kind of book that you just did intuitively yourself before you actually had a book that had the prompts in it? Like, did you go around, did you have a writing journal that you would take to cafes and stuff and write in?
No, I actually was not. I mean, I wrote on napkins for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. I would I'd write on anything I could write on. I just constantly have ideas and write them. I didn't put them in an actual physical journal, but it would have been much more useful to have them in a journal. I just didn't carry it around, but I would always be in like bars. I'm like, oh my God, I have boxes and boxes of napkins. But it's interesting. When I sat to write this journal, I was pitching the idea. And I was like, I'm going to do this to investors. I'm going to do the cannabis line. And I'm also doing this journal to be used while you're high. I didn't even know what that journal would be, but I was unequivocal in the notion that I could create something that was interesting. I had already written a couple books before. They were really quote books.
Yeah.
Where I organized them in a utility, like a guide to laughing at love, guide to laughing at sex, guide to laughing at family, where you look at a particular problem, you get poignantly witty perspective observations that help you laugh at yourself and put your problems in perspective.
And these were quotes that you curated?
That I curated based on my ADD. I only read books of quotations growing up.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
It's weird because so people think I'm really well read because I can quote anybody, but
Right.
I actually have never read the original text.
You just remember you just have the quote. That's so interesting. I never have good quotes. I always want to have them the opposite. I've read a lot of books, but I never remember anything because I don't write anything down, after
Well,
I,
like an example in the book would in the kissing section, the guide to laughing at sex would be one of the observations might be a kiss is an application for a better position.
Mhm.
Like, oh, yeah, that's true. Or a kiss is a means of getting two people so close together they can't see what's wrong with each other.
Mm.
Also true, kind of now when I think about it. So I didn't have any, I knew I could create this product. For some reason, I was very confident I could create it. And I did. I created, and so the formula for the journals is I have an exercise. It's pretty simple. It challenges perspective. Sometimes they're so ridiculous that you're like, how is this going to help me with creativity? So I have a why section that tells you a brief paragraph underneath. It tells you how what the mechanics are and how this helps you with creativity. One of the exercises in the book is losing speech. Like you're the coach of your kid's peewee basketball team and you're up 10 points at the half, but you bet heavily against them.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to create a halftime speech
To get them to lose.
and encourages your kids to lose.
Now, why? What's the point of that? To be counterintuitive?
Yeah, to be counterintuitive, to do something you would never do and get into to empathize with what it's to like one, turn your perspective upside down, to empathize with the children and empathize with their parents and manipulate people through storytelling. There's a lot going on when you do that. It's like write a motivational speech. One, so not as funny.
Yeah.
And
kind of, we've all seen that movie. Yeah.
We've all seen that movie, exactly. So this one's, so I try to flip things around. There's another exercise where I give you situations and you have to put yourself in the opposite gender's shoes, like your job interview or someone's hitting on you, or I have so many exercises. When someone asks me, I'm like, I have trouble remembering the ones that are in there.
Right, right. And doing them high just kind of helps because like you said in the beginning, it gives you guardrails, right? It's a way to kind of focus yourself. I mean, what do you mean by guardrails in a way?
Well, the guardrails are, it gives you a focused experience. Mm-hmm. So I can, hey, I can say this is cannabis for creativity, and you can smoke it and be like, okay, what do I do now? You might have some creative ideas, or you might write in a journal, or something might distract you. Or so this was really to ensure the efficacy of the cannabis product. And it can be used with any cannabis, but mine is particularly focused on creative strains.
Yeah.
So, as we said before, really using these journals, which are great even if you're not high, but then the repressing of judgment and the stimulation of the frontal lobe together makes it an even better experience.
All right. I'm selfishly going to ask this question because I'm curious, what are some of the strains and terpenes that are associated with creativity that you've been working with that are in your Pilgrim Soul products? Curious.
Yeah. So the strain, like Creative Reflection is the one that's the most hybridy one that we have. And there's more myrcene in that. It's like Blue Dream, Pineapple Express, Banana Runts in this particular one. Creative Focus is Lemon Jack, XJ13, Berry Punch. I swap out. There's a matrix of strains that I can use because strains are not always available. And so we looked at I work with this company, Abstracts Labs in Irvine. They have multiple PhDs in analytical chemistry, and we analyzed over 100 different strains and indexed high for creativity and, again, secondary and tertiary states. And this is all based on survey data from sites like Leafly and other sites that ask questions about how this makes you feel. So Lemon Jack, Lemonine, Pinene, they're generally very sativa driven. So they're very upbeat, head high. Let me show you what else is in there. I'm looking at my board here with I have Blue Dream, Creative Awareness, Blue Dream, Green Crack, and Super Lemon Haze. Creative Imagination is Trainwreck, Chem Dog, and Lemon Jack. Creative Focus is, this one is Motherland, XJ13, and Lemon Jack, but I also have one with Berry Punch.
Yeah. That's great. It's good. There's a nice selection in there.
It's like I start to salivate like Pavlov's dog
when you see some of those.
when you mention these strains.
So you discovered, I was going to ask you, and I like to always close in asking how cannabis has enhanced your own life. And I think you've pretty much answered that, but I'll sort of ask it again. How has cannabis enhanced your life? It seems like cannabis has been a part of your life since you've been a teenager, right? Pretty regular part of your life.
Yeah, I think if I had, people ask me, like, I've had a lot of really great jobs in CMO MySpace in the glory days of MySpace.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was a really unique experience. And people are like, what's the secret to your marketing and leading marketing for these organizations that are really creative organizations? And I always say data and empathy, but cannabis is the empathy part. Like, I really use cannabis it's enhanced my life it helps me really like connect with people, empathize with them. And it also gives me, I don't know, it makes it fun and interesting to empathize with them. And it's sort of like, we go through life and we're busy and we have like all these rationalizations to not deal with this and just scoot through life and not be bothered by things. And when I smoke cannabis, I'm like, it's sort of a truth serum for me. I can lie to myself on it, but at least I know I'm like, Sean, that's actually not the truth. I mean, I understand why you might say that to yourself, but that's really not reality. So it gives me this secondary narrative that is sort of a truth serum. I even use it in my relationship with my wife, in that she'll be mad at me for something. And when someone attacks you, it's really easy to defend yourself, whether you're right or wrong, like call and response. But when I'm high and she's like, you did this, and I'll be like, and I'll think about it, and I'll be like, wow, I'm an asshole.
Right. She's right.
She's right. I was like, I don't know why I did that. I certainly not. It doesn't have anything to do with the love and the impact I want to have on you as your husband. And then she's like pissed because she wanted to fight or something.
But I was going to say, you realize now wives everywhere are going to buy this product so that they can win every argument. Do you think it also gives you empathy for yourself? I mean, I think that's another thing, that you are less hard on yourself. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, I am a big fan of therapy. I haven't done a lot of it, but for me, it works as therapy. It allows me to sort through things and back up. And again, empathize, as you say, like empathize with myself and not be so hard on myself. I mean, I have moments of smoking and freaking out on myself. It's not 100% foolproof, but in general, it's been a win using cannabis to just really stay focused and understand who I am.
All right. Well, this is the part where I allow you to tell us where to find Pilgrim Soul and where to find these journals.
Well, the journals are available at pilgrimsoul.com, and there's a ton of content on pilgrimsoul.com. Probably 30% of it is about cannabis and creativity, and the rest is really just about creative hacks.
Yeah.
Ways to help find creativity in yourself and challenge perspective. And in California, our cannabis brand is available at Pilgrim Soul Cannabis. So you can Google. Fortunately, we've taken over all the Pilgrim Soul SEO. So just Google Pilgrim Soul.
Where did the name Pilgrim Soul come from?
Oh, thanks for asking. I loved it. Also, it's a poem I used to seduce my wife.
Ooh.
Back to the wife. It's from a Yeats poem. And I'll give you a dramatic read. It's 4 lines, so nobody has to get nervous.
Okay.
It goes, I was trying to convince her that I love more than just her beauty. And I was probably trying to convince myself at the same time. And then my love, I would love her, like, even as her beauty faded. So, because what I loved in her was beyond physical. Here's the poem. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. So in the context of the brand, the pilgrim soul is this native, creative explorer that's born inside of all of us that we tend to lose as we get fear of mistakes and risk and rely on default thinking, and we develop a negative bias towards everything.
That's beautiful. Well, Sean, thank you so much. It's been a really enlightening, kind of stimulating conversation. I feel like I might go and write something now.
Thanks for the great questions.
Sure.
Moving it right along.
Sure. All right. Well, Pilgrim Soul, Sean Gold, thanks again for joining the Enhance Your Life podcast.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in North America. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, head on over to wanabrands.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, brands.com.